The Catholic Church in Australia has released its official response to the findings of the Royal Commission into Child Sexual Abuse, saying it accepts 98% of the recommendations and vowing the Church's shameful history will never be repeated. Archbishop Mark Coleridge says he doesn't agree to lifting the seal of confession, arguing that doing so would impinge on religious freedom.
Were trust in the inviolability of the seal undermined, any chance a victim would mention this in confession to a priest would also be seriously diminished. Any chance a priest confessor might have to impress upon the victim the need to inform responsible adults outside confession and find a way to safety would also be lost. So we'll do all we can to ensure both the safety of children and the inviolability of the seal. We believe that legislation abolishing priest penitent privilege is based, in fact, on a lack of understanding of what actually happens in confession and therefore tends to move in a purely hypothetical world. It's difficult, therefore, to see how the law will work in practice. The bishops and religious leaders have the utmost respect for the rule of law. But we believe that this proposed law is ill-conceived and impracticable. It won't make children safer, and it will most likely undermine religious freedom. That's why we think it's bad public policy. I echo Sister Monica's words of gratitude to survivors and our words of sorrow and shame on behalf of the Catholic Church. How could it be otherwise?
Let's get more now on the Catholic Church defending its decision not to remove the seal of confession as recommended by the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. We're speaking now with Leonie Sheedy of the Care Leavers Australasian Network, which represents, supports and advocates for people who were raised in Australian and New Zealand orphanages, children's homes and foster care. Leonie, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks.
What's your initial response to this response by the Catholic Church?
Well, I think it was very pleasing to see that they're going to accept many of the recommendations, but sadly they still think they're in charge of the country and that they don't have to abide by the secular laws of this nation. And I'm afraid to the Catholic Church, Coleridge, all the archbishops in Australia, if you can't abide by the laws of this nation, then please go to the Vatican and live with the Pope, and you can live under canon law there. We are a secular country. Please respect all of the Royal Commission's recommendations, and I really find it obscene that they are referring this issue to a man from Argentina who lives in another country called the Vatican. You know, Australia makes the laws for Australia, and I'd like the Prime Minister to show leadership on this very important issue. And if the Catholic Church are not willing to abide by our laws, then why are we giving them taxpayers' dollars?
Leonie, there were many elements in this response. What struck you as the most significant response?
Oh, I felt when I read it, I thought, am I in the same country as the people who gave this report? That was my initial reaction. I felt sad. I always feel sad that the children like us who were raised in Catholic orphanages and who suffered great cruelty and brutality and sexual usage and humiliation by nuns and Christian brothers and Marist brothers, I feel that we're the forgotten victims and they never acknowledge the cruelty and the crimes committed in orphanages. They've set up a new organisation called the Catholic Professional Standards, and they were able to get charity tax exemption while the Royal Commission was going on in November 2016. There's not one word that's attributed to the abuse and the crimes in Australia's orphanages, Catholic orphanages.
For those people, those survivors that you're speaking of, have you been speaking with them today, and what's their overall feeling about this?
Well, many of us are so used to the Catholic Church ignoring us as victims. You know, they said sorry to our parents today. Well, we're the parentless. Our parents when our parents did come to visit us, we would hear the nuns berate our parents and put our parents down. And we were told that our own parents didn't love us, so no one else would love us. Many care leavers who have survived Catholic orphanages, they're angry at the Catholic Church. They're angry at, nobody acknowledges what happened to us in those horrid, horrid homes, which, the government's funded the Catholic Church to so-called care for us, and they didn't have the necessary checks and balances on those orphanages. And here they are taking money to so-called look after us. I find it obscene that the Catholic Church gets all this money from Australian taxpayers.
Leonie, the Church says it is adopting 98% of the recommendations. Does that give you hope? Does that encourage you?
Well, the one where they will not break the seal of the confessional and they're going to go to the Holy See for, that's not good enough for me. The safety of Australian children must come first. And, we don't live under canon law in this nation. We live under secular law. And it's not good enough that you refer that to a foreigner in the Vatican, a man who's never had children, and he's going to make a decision on what's acceptable in this nation. Scott Morrison, we need your leadership.
Right, Leonie Sheedy, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Joe.